Hey, yo, everyone, gather round. It's story time. Brought to you by the University of Alaska Fairbanks, Department of Social Work, and the Conscious Party Productions. You are listening to The Critical Social Worker, a revolutionary storytelling podcast.
A conscious party.
Revolutionizing our minds.
Elevating our consciousness.
Changing our worlds.
Your story.
My story.
Our story.
All right. Welcome to another episode of The Critical Social Worker, a revolutionary storytelling podcast. I think this is episode 60, so we're moving right along. And I think this is like number 3 or 4 for G and number 3 or 4 for Mark too, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. And
Trying to
we've
catch
done a
up
couple
to
of
you.
them. Well, we've done a couple of them, all three of us together. We had some different mixes. I've done some with just G. Me and Mark did a psychedelic episode a long time ago. Yeah. Well, it's a pleasure to have you. Just to let you know, if you're in the audience, you're welcome to chime in at any time if you have something you want to say in the chat, or you can always call in with the video call-in feature. We would love to hear from you and get some questions from you. Let me do a quick little introductions. First off, I got Mr. G. Ford. G's joining us all the way from Honolulu, Hawaii. I know G from, he was my student at Hawaii Pacific University. He was actually a part of the second cohort. And when I first started introducing talking circles, and so I have a lot of good memories about that cohort. So I just want to say welcome, G. It's a pleasure to have you with us again. How you been?
Man, I've been doing pretty well, and thanks again for bringing me out here. Appreciate spending the time with you as well as Mark. And like you mentioned, we definitely go kind of pretty far back, a unique experience and a unique meeting that's kind of, blossomed to a very fruitful relationship. So thank you for having me again.
Most definitely. And I think I always use G as a good example of the way reciprocity can work in social work because, he was my student, but non-traditional student. So, we're in the same age range and we clicked right off the bat and became friends afterwards. And or I guess kind of say that develops in the cohort in the class. But, G's helped me out a lot of times by coming here on the podcast and contributing his experience and knowledge on these podcast episodes. He's came and facilitated talking circles in classes when I was still teaching at University of Hawaii. And further than that, Alicia, my wife, she's going to come on here and ask a question in a little bit, but she's a LCSW and she provides G with group supervision towards his LCSW. So it's a good example. We'll talk about that later. How much time you got left, G, before you got it?
Shucks, I should be right at about 21 hours. So, man, that finish line is getting close.
How many hours is it total?
So 100 supervision hours. So it's going to be a total of 2,000 clinical hours experience inside of the clinic with that 100 supervision hours through a licensed clinical social worker, like mentioned, which I appreciate you allowing for me to share that time with her and to be able to get that license experience, just the diagnostic experience and everything that she actually brings to the tables. When that's complete, that'll be that 100 hours of supervision encompassing with that 2,000 clinical hours, and we're ready to go ahead and test out. That's the final process. So that's actually the middle part, but the test, that's the actual threat that you got to go through.
Yeah, well, you made me think of something, man. I should have been taxing you for access to my wife
I know,
for
right?
that long, I should have got a tax.
Today, because even though I'm at work and that's the office that I'm sitting in my mind, I'm like, I'm giving a little bit of payback here, right? Take off time from work.
Well, the other thing that I think is just important here, relevant here is that a lot of us, when I was going through my education, oftentimes nobody really even talks much about what happens after. You might know a little bit about having to take an exam or something like that, but you really a lot of us don't understand what it really takes to get to an LCSW or to get that licensure that you want. And so I think that's important to consider, that when you're done if you're on that route as an MSW, you really want to think about those kind of things, getting supervision, getting your hours in, and you got to take the exam still, G?
Yes, I do. Still got to take the exam. So I was shooting for December to try to take the exam. So this really going to kind of really depend upon my ability to kind of crunch in some extra time. And if Alicia has the extra time to kind of help me to achieve that, then that is kind of where I'm at. However, if it stays at this pace, definitely by going into February, I should be able to sit down, take the exam, and fingers crossed, hopefully that'll be a one shot, one kill.
Sure, it will be. I think a lot of the exam work with social work is learning how to take the test more than it is memorizing things perfectly. It's knowing and understand how the questions are asked and,
That's
and
100%
process
true.
through them.
That's been my experience with the LSW. That's been everybody's experience. I have a really good friend, and won't mention his name, but I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. But he had difficulties. So he struggled on the first time, and then he had to end up taking it again. And kind of the same thing was this understanding and learning how the questions and what the questions are asking. So understand how to read the questions, pull out what they're actually asking, and then kind of slowing yourself down to understand what the correct answer is. Because there will be a lot of different answers that are on there that aren't necessarily wrong, but it may not be the right answer in this situation, or it may not be, which is very notorious from this exam, may not be placed in the right, I guess, timeline of when you should do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, when I was prepping after my MSW, and I never did the LCSW, but it was in Utah. I think it was called a certified social worker, maybe MSW level. And I was nervous about the exam because when I went on and did like the practice test, I was getting like 50% every time, like 50% or 40%. And I was like, what am I doing wrong? And I didn't actually ever study significantly, like I said, as far as memorizing more stuff or in that regard. But what those online exams did is they showed me just what you said. Like sometimes I was just not looking at the question correctly. I was jumping in because they play on your instincts as a social worker of wanting to like solve a problem or like, I teach practice class right now, and a big issue with a lot of the students is, they're trying to jump. We're just trying to get to know them a little bit, and we're trying to jump all the way to solving problems. And that's what you do in the exam. Sometimes it'll say, well, what should you do here first? And, maybe the first thing is you should to say, introduce yourself or something, or I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was questions like that. Or it would just, the exact language of, what's most important here or things like that. And so you just got to really spend some time and look at how those questions are posited and not let them trick you on something that you actually know and understand, but you just didn't grasp the way that the question was going. So that's what I think. That's what my advice to people that are studying for them is learn the test, learn how they're asked, familiarize yourself with it, and then you'll be much more equipped to go and handle business.
And interesting enough, what you're saying too, I think is also a good practice for us to kind of pull back as social workers to realize that as well. So just kind of bring it back for what you was mentioning. We as social workers, we want to quickly establish that rapport and then fix the problem, right? And then a lot of times we didn't take time to understand what the problem actually looks like because we want to help. We want to help people to overcome whatever challenge they're going through, to be able to, progress past this time in their life to get to another to another area. But in order to help that individual, because remember, this is all client-centered, person-centered, we have to understand what that challenge looks like from their perspective, from their eyes, and then how to get to that end goal. And so I think a part of the way that the test kind of makes you go back and really take time to understand what the problem is and the process to go through, is also a good practice for us to keep for ourselves as social workers, whether we're going to be psychotherapists, or whatever aspect. And anytime we're working with anybody, I think that that's very important that we keep that in mind. So I thought that it was, something a part of the test. I'm like, I wish they would stop doing that. But, just kind of taking some time and then going back in hindsight, it actually makes me realize that sometimes we do need to slow down and really understand what it is that's in front of us versus assuming or thinking that we already have the answer.
Yeah, I think I always like to use this analogy, and I've never actually done this with a piece of paper, right? But so somebody comes in, a human being, maybe they start off life as a piece of paper, and they have all these experiences that get meshed up together, right? And so they're like this, and people to different degrees. And what the social worker wants to do when, like, it's talking about, especially some of you in this, in the audience, by the way, hi, Carla. What's up, Anna? Hey, Leanna. Hey, Linnell. Maybe actually everybody in here, in my practice class. And we want to come, and the client comes in, and we want to like unfold it all and look at it all and then solve the problem, right? But really, it's more like they come in for that first time, and you got this little corner, and you just unfold a little bit of it, and you talk about it, and you say, tell me more about that. And they take out a little bit more, and it's going to take a real long time and a lot of work to unfold that whole piece of paper and truly understand what's going on, or the many things that are happening with the individual. So I really appreciate you bringing that up. Mark Shimkus. Mark is also a former student of mine, much more recent, and he's also, like I said earlier, he's a veteran of the armed forces, but also of this podcast. And Mark, you're in grad school at University of Kentucky, right?
That's right. I'm at University of Kentucky. I'm actually doing 3 different certifications. So yeah, it's trauma, no, obviously the military, and going into school and type families certification. So yeah, gonna probably be going into the clinical portion of it, obviously, but so I'll have to be good information on the LCSW portion of it. But yeah, I'm loving it. And just going to the classes and everything like that, you just learn so much more. Those different therapies. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's one of those things people need to look out for. Not really look out for, but look forward to getting get them all straight, and don't try to mix them all up, because those different theories, and it's just it's a fun learning. I would say that, but that's just coming from a person that's like lifelong learning too. So I look forward to it.
Are you advanced standing?
Yes, I am.
So how many classes you got taken this semester?
So I'm only taking 4 this semester. I'm actually, since the certifications, I asked them advanced standings, but I want to do 2 years and I want to take my summers off. Kind of and that's one thing I think social workers should do too. Kind of set time away, even for education, for yourself. Have that time so you can recoup. So have that time so you can actually do something for yourself. With me, I like working around the house. If you look back at me, I like doing 3D printing. That's something for me. That's for me to get out of my mind, do something maybe creative. Maybe I might use it into when I get my LCSW. I might have some kind of an art therapy with 3D printing. Who knows? It might be something out there for that. It might be certain clients that actually it helps. So that's the point of thinking outside the box too, that we all can do as social workers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we can often, it's good to keep some things separate, obviously, but I think that we can mesh some of our personal interests into what we do. And sometimes those end up being the most creative and the best social workers, because they're taking some of the best parts of them or unique parts of them and finding something that you can share with the people that you're working with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How I think the route that you're going, Mark, with the 2-year advanced standing, for those of you that are tuning in, you're not quite sure, advanced standing. So what you need 30 credits, I think, for an MSW. And I guess an advanced standing, right? Is that for 30 credits for an
Right.
advanced standing? And so if you don't have a social work degree or you don't meet the requirements, it's basically going to be that, but for 2 years, so 60 credits, and you have to go through a lot of the foundational social work courses. But if you have a degree in social work, and I think it's different at different places, but like a 3.0 GPA, you meet certain requirements, no classes below a B maybe or something, then you can apply for advanced standing. And the cool part about it is you can get it out the way quick and you can move on with your life. I'm going to use I've been cursing on the podcast a lot, and I didn't used to do that, but I think it can be real shitty too, in the way that, like for me, I'm not saying I didn't get a lot out of my education, but it was like going to Hawaii, jumping in the university, taking 5 classes a semester. I had a job at the university and I had an internship elsewhere. I just met Alicia. I had a girlfriend. I really didn't have time to really experience it like I should have. And so if I could do it over and I had the time and everything, I'd do what Mark did, and I'd still do advanced standing, but I'd have spread it out over 2 years. And I remember you, G, I remember having this conversation with you when you were still my student. I swear that I had a conversation with you where I was trying to convince you to do advanced standing, and you were saying you were going to take the 2-year one anyway. What did you end up doing?
I actually ended up doing the advanced standing because I ended up turning around and I kind of looked at where I was in my life, at what age I was, what I was trying to accomplish, and the true grit and grind I had left to kind of, I guess, go through the process of education, right? And when I looked at everything and calculated, I realized at that point in time the advanced standing 1-year course actually was going to be the better choice for myself, so I can get out there, get to practicing, start rolling through the income that I needed to try to make. Plus, I have a retirement plan. So at 50 years old, I'm trying to retire. I had my kids kind of transitioning out of high school, going into college, and then my second one just rolled into college. So it worked out better for me to go ahead and get it all crammed in. But I will agree with you on both of you guys' points, which was because it was so fast paced and so I guess condensed, there wasn't really a lot of time to kind of sit in the knowledge and really digest it. It was take it in, get it understood, get a good grasp, get past that class, and then move on to the next one. So there is some pros, and it really like we all mentioned, and we all probably understand, is that life determines, and what's going on inside of your life will dictate what that path and trajectory would look like. But in hindsight, if I had the ability and if it did work out the right way, I kind of wish I would have slowed it down a bit, just to kind of sit in the knowledge, sit in the understanding, really grasp it, and which would have helped my understanding of different perspectives, theories, interventions, and stuff, and be able to get a better grasp instead of coming now at this point in time, recalculating and re-looking back at it, so that way I can rebuild that foundation that I didn't get a solid base ground on.
Yeah. I think, there is no perfect way to go about it. But one of the things I look at too is, so it's one thing, let's say you're at an in-person experience where you're having lots of meaningful interactions with your faculty, with the professors, with your peers, the students. And then there's on the other hand, like these online asynchronous programs that I'm a part of right now that I teach. And I would think that, you have to balance, like, because you get a lot out of just being working, right? Gee, as a social worker, you learn significant amount from just being out there and going through it and making mistakes and, having dilemmas and just the experience of it all. Versus, I think if I had to compare that and I was at an MSW and spreading it out versus an online program, I think you could probably get more value from just going out and practicing. So you might as well follow that, like what you all are doing, and get the advanced standing and get it done with. But if you have a chance to really have meaningful interactions and slow down and learn from things, then it really, and you have the time and the capacity to do that, then it makes sense to take your time. Mark, you're at University of Kentucky and you're in Alaska, obviously. So are you, all of your classes just asynchronous? Do you guys have a cohort that meets? How's that work?
Yeah, how they really do it there is kind of each one of the classes kind of have a group aspect to it, so you have to meet together. So and that kind of puts the synchronism onto just that group. There is a couple classes that are like, we will meet at this time, and maybe it kind of sucks for people that are way out of the time zone compared to them. But there haven't been that many that I've seen that have that. It's more of this is the group when you want to kind of come together, and it's a group decision on, okay, it'll be Monday at 2 o'clock or whatever it may be. So it's kind of leaving it up to them, which is a great I would say a lot of professors are trying, I think, going to that aspect of it, letting the students actually decide on those little things of when you're going to meet or whatever. And then just keeping it in the group and finding out what the group decides. So it's pretty cool, actually, that way.
Yeah. Sounds interesting. I've obviously there's been lots of changes since I've started teaching in social work. Like I said, I went through the pandemic with, I think, the second year of G's cohort.
Yes.
And so I've been online a lot since then. But when it was in G's, when I was teaching G's cohort, I was also teaching classes at University of Hawaii. And in both instances, I was kind of struggling with, like, getting the students to, have talk, discussion, share their knowledge, their experience the way that I thought that they could, should, and wanted them to. And I introduced the talking circles, like not just did them, but we put them actually in the class. And G has, experience leading a couple of them. And then I got to all the way to let me back that up a little bit. They were extremely successful. I love the talking circles. And I always go back to what I was trying to prove with research was that talking circles produce critical consciousness. And I won't say his name, but G and I he had a peer in his cohort, and he was an ex-cop and real conservative, and he'd make fun of a lot of the stuff that we talked about as, like, liberal ninny stuff. But when we had a focus group about the talking circles that we had. And I remember I explained what critical consciousness was. And I was really surprised to see this guy leaped up and raised his hand. And he's like, oh, what you just said about critical consciousness, that's what the talking circles are. And so I knew that, from if it gets to me and it gets to him and some of the other people, then they're creating unity. And so now I call them unity circles, but I have voluntary ones now for each of I just blend them all so that any class can come to any of them, but I host them 2-3 times a week. And I get a ton of attendance from the students because I feel like in, this day and age, online asynchronous, there's not the ability to connect, Me and G probably in that situation probably don't even become connected the way we do now because a lot of our things happen after class and going out and talking as we're leaving, walking together and things like that. And that's how we got to know each other, and students don't have that. And I also think social workers tend to be, folks that have had some more rough life experience than some others. And so not all the time, but often. And so, we come with some stuff and then things get on. We still have to go on with our work and our lives and our families, all the other things that were burdening us before as we get our social work education. And we're burdened, our hearts are burdened. We got a lot going on. And sometimes it feels like you don't have anywhere to go or to talk to. And so I think the talking circles, having those opportunities are vital to social work. And I think it should be more of, oftentimes like the Council for Social Work Education, the CSW, they do a lot of good things as far as making sure that you're teaching certain curriculum or whatnot, but there's really no requirement to make sure that you're having meaningful, transformative discussions or that you have opportunities for students to connect or unburden themselves. And so I think as social work, I really wish that we could shift in that direction, and focus more on those meaningful, transformative dialogic experiences. But I was wondering maybe both of you could talk about that a little bit and then we'll move into some questions I've got from a couple of people recorded. So I was wondering, what do you think about that? What did it contribute to your learning, the talking circle versus some of the other ways that we learned or that you
Well, to
learned?
start off with, typically when you're inside of a formidable type of education atmosphere, academia, all this kind of stuff, it's everything is being pushed at you. And you're supposed to receive and digest, and which is okay because there's things that we need to learn, but also there's a lot that we bring to the table. So kind of even when we go back and think about the theory of self, right? Bringing those things from your experiences, your challenges, and everything that you've experienced throughout life and what that brings out of you to the table and how that can be applied or how that can assist or help others out there, right? So we all bring good things there. And that's, I think, what the talking circles actually facilitated was that opportunity and that time to, like we already talked about, slow down, but to be able to bring those things that we have inside of ourselves to contribute to everybody else. And it gives it where it's a good platform where you feel comfortable in doing that and you feel respected. And then as well as everybody that's participated in that, that's also a chance for them to kind of slow down and then digest what you're bringing to there, in a respectful way. Like we always are kind of more centered on who we're helping, who that client is and what that challenge is. And even like what Mark was mentioning, being able to take that time to yourself and kind of, get that self-care, that self-time back. That's also kind of facilitated in the talking circles also, because now we're not worrying about a particular client. It's almost like you're kind of thinking about yourself and then kind of bringing that expression out into that group format. So being able to kind of feel like you're a part of the process, like your thoughts, your ideas, are valued and actually can be contributed, as well as anything else that somebody else has to bring to the table can be contributed and give you different perspectives and give you something to bounce off of, whether you agree, disagree. But it just gives that area and that time for us all to be able to collaborate, digest, bring in other perspectives, and then even challenge your own, because you hear things from other people. And so that's why I feel like the talking circles should be inside of any academia setting periodically, because we all, like I said, we all have stuff to give and stuff to present. And using academia, they're presenting to you and feeding to you and what you're going to receive back. And that's what we learn. I mean, since our time of elementary, right? That's why they tell us, hey, you need to do write this way and spell it this way and do it this way. So basically conform. That's taking out some of that, I guess, colonized way of learning and sharing and stuff, and then bringing it more to a social work realm where we all have something to bring to the table. And then now we have the platform to do it in a respectful way where everybody can receive it and you feel comfortable presenting it.
Yeah, you make me think that in the talking circles, you mentioned like the colonized education, right? Well, I found that even in some educational settings where they claim to be decolonizing, for example, well, they use very Western methods. And so how they would come, even like with say like anti-racism, for example. So in an anti-racism class or whatever it is, conference, forum, whatever it is that you end up going to, a workshop, oftentimes what they do is they use Western methods. And so what you'll do is you'll go there and they'll teach you about what it means to decolonize the classroom or what it means to be anti-racist. But in my perspective, I'm not saying there's no value in educating in any way, shape, or form in that way and learning new ways to think about things and new ideas. But really, from my perspective, we don't need to be educated about those things. What we need to do is have like a talking circle, multicultural talking circle, and practicing anti-racism is me listening to you and you listening to me and us, not dismissing each other, taking that time. And then, you know what, you grow a little bit closer together. And then you ain't going to be able to hold on to something like a racist idea any longer because your brother or your sister is sitting next to you and you heard their experience and it doesn't align with what you believed. And so then you become anti-racist naturally because it's a value that you're espousing by participating, like I said, in these multicultural, different racial backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds. To me, that's the real practice. And sometimes we use that Western educational, those Western educational methods, and we try to educate others on it when really that's not what education, it's not a transformative educational process is. That's the banking model. That's the Western banking model of education, just a transfer of information when instead of it being like this story I'm going to teach you or this thing I'm going to teach you and give to you, instead it's I've got some things to share. You've got some things to share. We're all going to share it. And instead of it being my story and your story, it becomes our story, right? Because we've shared in those experiences. I know,
You're
Mark,
right. And I was gonna say you're right, and just to throw in there real quick, I mean it's very similar to like how the military experience is, right? I mean, we all come from different walks of the earth. We're
Exactly.
thrown into this melting pot, and then next thing you know, you going from being like, I've never seen a white person, I've never hung out with an Asian, to now, man, the only
Yeah.
brothers I have is the white and the Asian person that's next to me. That's my only
Yeah.
people right now. So it's all it's the talking circles is like a I guess a smaller version of building it, and I don't even want to put it that way. I'll just say this. It's very similar to the culture of military. And if you kind of go back and you look at military members, how they easily can, I guess, navigate and integrate with so many different races, creeds, kinds, thoughts, ideas, and whether they agree or disagree, they still can work together and move on. That's kind of the same, I guess, environment that the talking circles present, giving people the opportunity to come there as they are, presented how they are, allow for other people to hear, understand, and like you said, that kind of pushes out the racism because it gives us a chance to understand each other instead of you again
Hmm.
colonizing it and teaching it the way that you're teaching it to me. And I do understand like the way you mentioned like the Western way, it'll say and teach it and put it this way. Well, still that's a colonized way because you're only doing it from your westernized perspective. So I mean it all the way around, I mean, it's very easy to see how how our thoughts and theories and the way that we're led to believe is still controlled by somebody else's ideologies and their beliefs. But being in the military, these talking circles help to break down those barriers because it gives that platform and that open forum for us to really talk about it, debate about it, and understand it from a different perspective.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up. What do you think, Mark? How have you went through a completely for the most part online asynchronous undergraduate
Yeah.
education? I know you're heavily involved in the clubs and other things. By the way, Mark was a social work student of the year last year at the university. So congratulations for that. But
Congrats.
so
Thank
how
you.
did
Thank you. Thank you.
how was it that you were able to stay connected? Because out of all the students, I mean, you were up there as, if not the most connected, one of the most connected students. So how did you manage to do all that?
I just, I just had the privilege for it. For one, I will say that. I'll just say it this way. I had the privilege of from when I was in the military to now. I I don't have to worry about how most students have to worry. I have a retirement coming in. I have VA benefits. That took a whole load of worry off my shoulder when I went to the school. I mean, I didn't have to pay for classes. I don't have to pay for books. So, and then I have an income coming in. It's kind of like it's pretty much a no-brainer to say, how'd I do it? Once I put everything into place like that, because I had the time to be able to do it. I can take my time. It's that slowing down that we're talking about. I just loved it after I had to have that, even in school, after being in the military for 20 plus, well, a little more than 20 years. I remember the day I retired. There was like a huge weight just off my chest. My blood pressure went down, everything. It was just the stress of all those years just kind of like dwindling away, knowing I don't have to worry, taking that time to calm down and everything. And it was great because it's like G said, that being in the military breaks down all those walls. I I mean, I was a platoon leader in there in the military at a time, and I had everybody from India, Ukraine, Africa, like everybody, and then gay and trans too at the same time. Well, the trans couldn't come out, but we knew. It's just one of those things where like we know, don't worry about it, just do your thing. Everything goes out the window when you're in it almost goes primal in a sense too of we care about our our people. And it doesn't matter what you look like, you're our people. You are us. You're our brothers and sisters. That's why we say brothers and sisters in arms. And there's a reason for that. It doesn't matter. We might back and forth with. I was in the army. You might back and forth with the Air Force, the Navy, Marines. You'll go back and forth with that. But when push comes to shove, you're going to have their back. Doesn't matter whatever it is. It's just you might be the picked on brother at the time or picked on sister at the time, but when it comes down to it, it's love. It's not really someone picking on you. It's love. We used to have this saying: if I'm not picking on you, it means I don't like you. In the military, like you wanted to be almost picked on all the time. Just having that kind of like punching the shoulder, joking type of stuff. Because if it went too far, if there was enough people in there going, no, stop. And nobody really hesitated on coming forward with that. So that and coming forward into school, I think that's what kind of pushed me to going into staying in those clubs and getting that togetherness in those areas. And that's probably honestly that's where it came from. I believe.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, you segued us right into talking about military and social work experience and things like that. And I've got a couple pre-recorded questions from Alicia and Nico. So let's go to those and talk about those. We'll bring Alicia on first.
Hey, but honestly, Mark, congratulations, man. I'm proud of you. Way to represent.
Thank you.
Hey guys, so I had a question about the military and social work. Q, I know we've spoken about using therapeutic approaches like cognitive processing therapy to help with PTSD. But just wondering if either of you have ideas of anything that's missing from social work or from clinical practice, from therapy approaches that is needed in the military community with active members, veterans, military families. Just curious from your experience, what your thoughts are.
I'll just open it up to y'all. Sounds like she's asking what's missing from services that military families and folks.
So two things. Well, so directly as far as for services, in which, this is my one perspective, obviously. So there's probably many other different things to think about. People got other different areas to look. But two things that I wanted to kind of respond with that. So the first thing is that one part of the services that aren't, I guess, put a lot forth into is worrying about mental health on the way in, as well as mental health on the way out. And I'll try to say that where it makes a little sense. Usually, I mean, when you get ready, when you come into the military, it's break you down through boot camp, build you up so that way you believe in whatever, believe in the organization and what the views and what the missions are. Learn how to follow directions and be the strongest warrior that you can be to complete the mission. Which that word I'm saying, be the strongest warrior, is going to come back into my second theory and thought into that. But little do we get prepared for the true mental health challenges that you're going to be experiencing and going through during out that time. So I believe that a part of the services that's lacking is starting off preparing us, building us with these coping strategies and techniques and stuff that we end up trying to teach veterans on after they experience all these different severe mental health challenges. Now we're trying to teach them coping strategies and teach them how to deal with different things and work through different stuff. That's one lack there, because I mean, if we're teaching it to them at that point in time, then wouldn't it be just as effective to learn that from the very beginning? And it's not saying that it would mitigate any mental health challenges, but I truly believe, and I think that others would agree, that that would definitely better prepare you for the challenges as they come. And so they'll be less devastating and less disruptive to your life if you had a better playing ground to start on. And then on the way out, it's the same thing. It's hurry up, do SEPs and TAPs, or TAPs and TAMs, or whatever they call it. But it's basically on the way out, it's like a 2-week class. It's here's how to write a resume. Here's how to fill out a job application. Here's a couple places you can look. See you later. And then you're out the door. And then now even so you never got anything to deal with all the different challenges and stresses that you go through. And it doesn't matter in what aspect of the military you've been in. I don't care whether you admin, I don't care whether you have a combat related MOS. You go through the ringer. If you go through your tours or whatever you go, you are stressed and you're tested and you're challenged completely. So then on the flip side, coming back out, where's the preparation to help me to prepare not only to go into civilian life, but to take all these different things that I've been balling up inside of my head and then take that out into the civilian world and be able to cope with those things while I am in transition. And usually all that stuff continues to keep put on the back burner because, we're trying to figure out, okay, where am I going to go work? Or what am I going to go do? How do I get established? All these other different things. And so again, we keep suppressing those things that we are experiencing, compartmentalizing it, and then never bringing it back out until it actually just rears its nasty head. And it's a big issue at that point in time. So that's one thing that I feel like is completely lacking. The preparation in the beginning, as well as the preparation going out. And we're not talking about preparation coming into services, but the challenges and the things that you're going to deal with and face throughout that time. And then how do you still cope and deal and progress through those things on the way out while you are working through civilian life? And so with that second part of what I was also saying is that a part of it is that warriors mentality, the culture of our warrior spirit, that we're warriors, we're war fighters, we're here to complete missions and accomplish things. And in order to do that, I mean, you wouldn't, and just for a kind of visual perspective, if you were Spartans, right? And you're getting ready to go out there, you're not going to find the weakest one and say, hey, he's going to be a part of us with the Spartans, the guy with no muscles, no skills, he can't fight, can't do anything. He's not going to be with the Spartans, right? He's not a warrior. So, but what does that build? That warrior's mentality. I got to be tough. I got to be strong. I can't be weak. I can't be faced with any type of mental health challenges. I have to be up to par at all times. And that's another part of why I say the beginning and the end part, those two things that I'm missing, kind of will break down this whole culture of this warrior spirit. Because to be honest with you, I was always afraid to go seek mental health. Why? Because if they find me crazy, I'm going to end up inside a triple or some psych ward somewhere, and then after I finally get out of the psychiatric ward, then they processing me out because I'm unfit for duty. So just that whole culture of always having to be at your tip top best and in the best shape and ready to go at any given time forces you to have to never deal with those things that you are going on internally. Because if you're found to be unfit for duty, then you're no good to the warriors that are next to you. And it's kind of even going back to what Mark's saying, like that camaraderie that's built, like we joke around, we make joke, but that means I love you. But then at the same time, I don't want to let you down. So I can't be challenged. I can't be dealing with suicidal ideations or homicidal ideations or, or just stress or whatever you can place on that, And so those are the two things that I feel like are really important to not only pay attention to, but to also kind of implement, and hopefully there's some change, because that's some of the things that I faced, some of the challenges I had. And similarly with a lot of my friends and other veterans that are here and many of them that are not.
Almost like, things start, you have to be so strong in which you can be, but the weight keeps piling up because you're never allowed to unload any of it. And then, we criticize folks when they collapse under the weight of it. That's where individualism comes into play, right? Personal responsibility. And we often blame them. And those folks end up mental health breakdowns, in jail, even shot sometimes. You know what I mean? So that's what it is. And as I see it, the weight keeps growing and growing, and we're not giving folks in the military a chance. They're carrying the weight for all of us sometimes, but yet we don't have a way, a method, an opportunity for them. It's got to be a continuous opportunity to unburden, lighten the load a little bit, right? We shouldn't be so surprised when some people collapse under the weight of all that.
Yeah,
What do you think, Mark?
perfectly said, perfectly said. And then when people
Yeah,
collapse,
perfectly said.
yeah, I mean, when people collapse, then it's, oh, what's wrong with him?
Absolutely. So for me, like I said, the 20 years worth, and that just big ball, like once it relaxed, that afterwards definitely needs to happen, because I'm sure it doesn't happen to everybody. I will say there was some, I was not in at the time. It was my last day. I'm not saying there wasn't anything that kind of helped me along during that time to unburden that, maybe some psychedelics of some sort. But I will say this: before you get in, think of it just as a normal person. Like, don't bring anything into it. Most people, when they think about military, you're thinking about like Full Metal Jacket. That's your aspects. That's what you're thinking. Basic training is going to be. This person's going to be yelling at you, this, that, and the other. That's kind of what you're ready for that. But how is Hollywood getting you ready for the military? It's not. It's just a thought process. That's all that is. And that's what most people come into the military, and that's their thought process. They should be doing more for it. So your drill sergeants there, everything like that. Yes, they have to break you down and everything like that. But there should be a time after all that, or prior. It's probably going to be after, showing those soldiers that, like, this is what happened. This is what you need to understand, that whole process. And you could break it down for them. Most of them will understand. I've done it when I get a new person. I have done it when I got a new person in straight from AIT. And it's kind of like, you know what just happened here? And this is before I was even a social worker. This is, and it comes to when that soldier goes forward, does their job, they understand it. And you don't have, and she could probably agree with this, you have those soldiers that come in, and all of a sudden you go through that process. It's not really explained to them. Then they have this grief of like, what the hell did I just go through? They know there's no one there to explain it to them. And just that explanation in the beginning, after all that, can better their career. I've had, honestly, I've only had one kid, when he came in brand new, have some kind of behavior issue after that talk. Most of the people in other commands, other platoons, they'll have major, there's a lot of behavior issues once you get a brand new person, especially those first 90 days. That's kind of like the time where they're going to have issues, because everything's getting brought in. Everything's brand new to them. So they're going to be at the kind of what the hell moment. But getting something like that would be a huge plus to them. Even keeping people in because of that, because those are a lot of the reasons why people can't assimilate with the military. Let's say can't assimilate to a military life, and they'll be kicked out for that, because they'll blame it on, if someone goes to behavioral health, wait, they can't assimilate. They can't assimilate because of this. But also at the same time, throughout my 20 years, it's called escort. That's the suicidal thing for Army, and I was a Ace Train the Trainer. So I trained people for that too. I liked it just because I can keep my finger on the pulse of people. And when you give those classes, there'll be people coming up to you and like, I just suicide's weak. You're a weak person. That's a lot of the mentality. And I've had people tell me that. And the real funny thing, shouldn't even say funny thing, but the reaction I've seen most with people that say that, they're the first ones to come to me. It's just the way it is. But other things too, just keeping community up. There's always those things for that. There's, like community memberships within your company, but nobody actually advertises that, kind of like that, so to speak, advertises it in the military. Those are those hidden programs that people aren't even told about. Like, I can go to a community center and get this. I can go rent this. I'm worried about doing so and so and this with so and so. I can go get this here. Just those things. Then on the back end, yeah, it's just like she said. Here's how you do a resume. This hopefully you do good. High five. Here's your papers. I mean, basically that's about it. When I retired in 2021. It was quite funny because I went through this class of this is military terms and this is civilian terms. It's like, this is obvious. Like, what? Why did you even put it out there? Like, I can Google this. Like just hit me in the foot. That's probably a lot better. But yeah, on the way out, you could do a heck of a lot better. When I got out, I had a bachelor's degree in aviation maintenance science. I had all my certifications to go just work on airplanes. It's kind of like, no, I'm gonna throw that out, and I want to do what I want to do. And I can talk to other things too, like how when I was diagnosed with PTSD, and I will say the therapy that helped me most was over the summer. It sounds weird, but it was over the summer. I went down south to South America and did an ayahuasca retreat. Best thing that ever happened to me. Honestly, best thing that ever happened to me. Loved it. Got through a whole bunch of things in my head. And like when you're talking about folding that paper out, I would say, like, if honestly, and it's just me, I'm not saying it's good, it's for everybody. It kind of like took that from where you were, just like at least half the paper was already undone just from that. It was just wild how fast it worked, but it's not for everyone. You have to be at that point for openness. That's what I would say to social workers and therapists out there. Make sure your person's there before they unravel something that's not supposed to be unraveled yet. But yeah, I would say that on the front and the end of military service.
Yeah, no, and when you were talking, especially, in the beginning when you were speaking about getting into the service and you go through boot camp or whatever and you get out, and really it sounded to me like you're saying that folks just don't have a way to process their experience that they would understand if they just, because it's their experience, right? But it never has a chance to unfold itself. And so it just gets crinkled up, and they carry it with them and sometimes without fully ever understanding it. And so it would be great for opportunities for them to do so. We're getting on time, so we got some things we got to cover. So I'm going to push us forward. He's got 2 questions on this video. So this is Nico.
Didn't make it to this podcast in between practicum practice and employment. It's just pretty much got me strapped down, not to mention next week I'm going on a business trip, so I'm in preparation of that. But I guess the only thing that I had for the veterans experience in social work is, for older veterans like myself who, entered the active duty military, 2003 or before then, there was still a whole bunch of things that were in place that hindered or held other folks back. I remember the don't ask, don't tell policy, people not being able to openly be who they were. That was a prevalent thing during the time that I served. And I think, there really was never a transition or some kind of training or some kind of awareness phase to bring our minds from, adapting to that, then adapting to, okay, now you can be yourself and say who you love and so on and so on. So I say that to say, I think just a small portion of the military experience too is reopening our minds to some of the things that we were taught that wasn't necessarily right. I was in the military 13 years, and probably 8 of those years it was drilled into me that don't ask, don't tell, don't ask, don't tell. So that could have easily developed a unconsciously homophobic thoughts in my mind, without me knowing that. So and I try to make a effort to be aware and practice self-awareness when dealing with everyone. But I think that's a part of the veterans experience that isn't talked about often. Again, like we never received any kind of training or anything like that helped us transition from viewing things that specific way. And outside of that, I think
let's go with that, because he kind of reflects on something else. So let's start with that so we don't get lost in it. Either one of you go ahead and take it away.
It's pretty interesting that that it kind of, if you listen to the things that he was talking about, it kind of goes back into exactly what I was saying. Never being able to be given those tools to be able to deal with those different mental health things and I don't even want to put mental health things, just the mental things, the mental challenges, the stuff you got to process, the thing you got to endure, and then to make it all make sense. Again, it's kind of the same thing. I told you to do this. This is what you do. Okay, I'm doing it because my body can do it, but my brain is not understanding what this is. My brain's not understanding why is this way, or why do I feel this way? Why am I okay with it? Why am I not okay with it? Why am I against it? How do I deal with that? Who can I talk to about that so that I can make a better understanding of it? So a lot of it, when it comes to the mental challenges, it just feels like, and it kind of answers Elisa's question too, is that it just kind of seems like, at least from my experiences, those are always different taboo situations or taboo type of discussions or topics that they just kind of just ignore, don't address, and just say, just follow what I say. Do what I say, and complete what the mission is that I put forth in front of you. Don't challenge necessarily. And don't even think about it. I guess that's kind of what's the underlying thing is said, but not really being said is, you process it how it is. We're not worrying about that. We only care that you are able to do what we tell you to do. And that's a part of the lack from a clinical standpoint. What's lacking in the military is just being able to give people time to process and work through those things. And even like Mark said, going back to his example in the beginning, when he had his soldiers come out of AIT and they went through all of this crazy stuff, and then he sat down and said, okay, let's process what you just went through. Some of those key things. I don't really feel like I've been afforded many opportunities, as well as from me observing from many of my peers, colleagues, and subordinates, the opportunity to just process what's happening, understand it, make it make sense, figure out how to cope with and deal with it, so that way you're comfortable inside of your mind and your body with what you're experiencing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like, it sounds weird to say it. The easiest way I can explain it in my own mind is when you go into the military, you take your oath, right? And your oath goes in order for a reason. And I will say it this way: it's the Constitution, President, and the officers, right? This is why I'm kind of a constitutionalist too. So by that, I have to listen to that. That's the policy of the land, so to speak. But you can break it down to when they go in, and there's this policy of don't ask, don't tell, like he's talking about. Is that even if all are created equal by this paper, and this is our ultimate paper that we're going by, that policy goes against it if you truly think about it. And that's how I always thought about it. That's why I never cared about that policy. And that's why I kind of pushed it even when I was in the military. I'm like, it's just a different view to look at it. And that's kind of the view I always said, hey, there's another view to my soldiers. I was always like, there's another view you can look at. It's just giving that other one. It's like, okay, that's the policy, but what do we truly go by? I mean, just give them that peace of mind to give them that time to go, what do we truly think? Like, do we really want to go by it? Do we have to? I mean, within our little group, our little platoon here, do we really truly have to? You could say it like I was going against policy, but the policy changed. They're already ahead of the game now. That's how you can look at it too. It's just another view of looking at the same issue uh, and taking care of it at your lowest level while you were while I was in the military. That's how I looked at it. I'm just giving you the experience I had, and there's many experiences out there, and you can see it even in the news. There was during Don't Ask, Don't Tell, people got beat up because of it, and that was the mentality those people were at, and like that was just where they were. It's not a good thing, but because of the policy, you can, as a clinician, you can kind of see where they were at, and that's what we got to get to is just meeting people where that point of meeting people where they're at.
Yeah, I like that. That's important. Let's continue with the second half of this, and I'll let you guys speak on what he has to say here.
Like for an older veteran like myself, the military teaches you a whole lot of things, some positive things too. So, I kind of went into social work, or particularly my practicum and practice, already kind of seasoned with, these skills and the ability to conduct myself in a professional manner, or what I believe to be, professional based off of the experience that I obtained in the work place and also through the military. And just understanding that, everybody hasn't had those experiences. You're going to interact and intermingle and, teamwork with people that don't have that life experience and these military rules. Just a quick story. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I remember I was at my practicum and I heard one of the folks refer to the professor by their last name without a Mr. or Mrs. And I thought to myself, well, that's pretty crazy, because not only, as a child was I taught by my parents, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, Mr. and Mrs., but the military drills that into you. So it was just kind of weird for me to see someone, call them by their first name, a person in authority by their first name or just by their last name without a suffix. So that's just some things that, we experience as military folks, or my experience as a military person. And I can go on and on with this. I don't want to, overkill it or anything like that. But I just want to share those few things with you. Thanks.
So he didn't ask a question, but, I think he's reflecting and he wanted to know what you all thought about it. So I'll leave it to you two.
And I'm happy that he did reflect it that way, because we kind of been on some of the shortcomings of military experience and military life and stuff like that, and then that and that's good, because now we're able to highlight some of the valuable things that I feel like came out of the military. So just kind of how we was mentioning, what it's like, conform to rules, regulations, follow all orders of those appointed before you, so on and so forth. It builds discipline, and you're just teaching discipline and teaching people how to respect, and teaching people how to, and of course, we can go all different kind of ways, what I'm saying? So some people can say, that's not appropriate. Some people say this is appropriate. But in my opinion, like, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, or appropriately addressing people in a respectful way, those different things are some of the good things that came out of the military. And that's why many companies, many organizations, and just many people in society always either feel comfortable with somebody that been in the military, or just would rather to have somebody from the military in whatever environment that looks like than just any small Joe, because they know that they're going to get these things from us. They know they're going to get somebody that's disciplined. They know they're going to get somebody that does their best to follow all rules and regulations. Notice I said, do the best to follow all rules and regulations, whatever's the point of form. You know, they know that they're going to get communication out of that person. They know they're going to get 100% of effort out of that person. So, like, kind of in what he's saying, and I even noticed some of the same things when I was in class, actually in some of our classes when I was at HBU going through the social work course, just kind of looking at how certain people would kind of talking away or like talking during class, and it's like, hey, quiet down, somebody's talking. So those different respect factors and just common courtesies that society looks at to be more favorable and more appropriate, that is something that the military does provide and does teach us. And it is a slight shock when you come out and you're used to, you know, addressing people appropriately, and then you see other people don't. It is a little bit of a culture shock. And it is a little bit of an adjustment, but I do appreciate him bringing it out, because there are many good things and good qualities that the military will not only enforce and instill in you, but also bring out from you and make you that more successful and that more integratable also into your new life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll say this, I was on both sides of it. So I was enlisted, then I became a warrant officer. So it was you know, I went up the ranks becoming a sergeant. Then I became a warrant officer. So it was from sergeant and like private to sergeant to yes, sir. So I've seen all those, and I've been on the end of all those. I totally get it. It's that normalization of at least something. That's the good thing about that. When you're in, it's not like it's an easy thing to do. It's just a normalization. Now you can. I admit this. I was that warrant officer. That was okay. Hey, know your surroundings. You know, and I'll tell people that know your surroundings, especially junior enlisted guys and sergeants and stuff like that. Like the enlisted people, I would say know your surroundings, know who's around you. We can be Mark and whatever your first name is, but know your surroundings. Once a certain person comes in or something of that nature, know the people that's around. It has to stop right there. You know, know those boundaries, so they can actually it can help people out, get them more, so to speak, at ease. But yeah, it's having at least I like giving that peace for a soldier, especially as a warrant officer. I love giving that peace to a soldier. Just calm down, do your thing, man. I'm just here. I could learn from you. And just that little bit just calms people down. And like, I think that should be learned in the military too, at the same time. I'm just here. It's just a rank. Go about your business, kind of thing. Because some people get, sir, like, it's like, calm down, man. I have to add this kind of in. So when I became a warrant officer, there's a tradition of giving a dollar coin away. First person that salutes you. But I'll say it this way. I gave it to a person that more deserved it, that was kind of going out of the way with that. I was going to the PX, and a kid was like, and it's insane. He was switching around a carrier for his baby to go salute me. I'm like, bro, you have more. That's more. No, don't even do that. It's like, that's more precious than that salute you can give me. So here you go. I want a handshake, and then gave him that dollar. So those things.
Yeah, I appreciate that, G and Mark. And it made me think when Nico was talking and you all were reflecting, it made me think about respect. And I think there's different ways that you can show respect, right? And be respectful. And so I think you could come and show respect and call me professor or sir, but still kind of be a jerk about it. It's possible. I mean, it doesn't usually. Most people that talk to me that way are respectful, right? But it could happen. And you could also come call me Ace or Christian or whatever and be ultimately respectful and listen to what I say. And so I think, as whether you're military, a veteran or whatever, or whoever you are, that's part of being a good social worker, right? Is opening up and understanding that our worldview isn't the only one. You know what I'm saying? That the way that we're looking at it, that our perspective on respect somebody else may just have a different perspective. We may feel disrespected at a time, but the reality may be is that they just have a different interpretation. You know, I think back all the way back 20 years ago when I was before I ever went to school for social work or whatever, when I was doing real good social work, I worked at a juvenile treatment facility. And I loved those kids, but I had an Inupiaq, an Alaska Native kid one day. And, well, I shouldn't say one day, it was over some time, and we started to have a little tension between us. And I remember was assigned to him to, like, sometimes if a kid is really acting up, you get a one-to-one duty. So you got to just be with them one-to-one for the entire time. So I was with him, and I can't remember exactly what happened, but I was trying to chastise him about something, and he wouldn't look at me. And I was like, you little motherfucker, man, like, just have some basic respect for me, man. Just look at me. And, like, I remember it got to the point where he got up in my face and he ripped off. I had a radio with the headphones, and he ripped it off, and nothing big happened, but he got in my face, had to be separated. And then I was talking to him later, and I was like, man, well, why were you being so disrespectful? He's like, I don't even know what you mean. And I was like, I was trying to talk to you, and the least you could do is look at me. And he's like, man, I'm not raised that. I can't remember exactly what he said. I'm not raised that way. We don't look at our elders when there's a conflict or something. It's a sign of respect for us not to look. I can't remember exactly how he said it, so I don't want to misquote him. But it was like an eye-opener. You know, I'm over here getting heated over this kid, this mofo, disrespecting me, right? Escalating the situation. Whereas a social worker that may have been, I don't know if training can do those kind of things, but, that was properly prepared to deal with an Alaska Native Inupiaq kid. And for me, I was the one being disrespectful. You know what I mean? I was disrespecting his natural experience and what he, not taking into account that he might be different from me, expecting him to conform to what I think he should be doing. So I really appreciate that whole conversation. I want to shift it just because we're getting on. So a big reason I love talking to you two anyways, and I love always bringing in the, veteran perspectives. But on top of that, we had the election recently, and I'm not on left or right. I don't play those kind of politics anymore. And no disrespect to anybody who's involved in partisan politics in one way or another. But I'm not. And so I sit in this unique position where I kind of don't trust either side, and I look at both and whatever. For somebody like me, there's often not a place to go and not a lot of people to talk to because, you're supposed to choose a side or whatnot.
Mm.
But to take that further, I'm a social worker, and I'm a social work professor. And so I work with all kinds of students, all different people from all around the world, like literally all around the world. In this chat right now, we've got people all around the world, not just Alaska. Alaska's big enough as it is. A lot of people think Alaska's not multicultural, but even if you took Alaska Natives, there's too many for me to count right now or to respectively lay down. But even if you had an Alaska Native group, it would be multicultural by a big time. And so I feel like I represent everybody. I shouldn't say I represent everybody, but hey, I need to be inclusive of everybody, all the people that I work with as a social worker, as a leader, and especially as a social work professor. And I've had a number of students that I have not just taught or been in my class, but that I've connected with on a deeper level that are veterans, On another hand, I also know a lot of people that, I don't want to get into like specific voting or whatever, but I know a lot of students that don't align with the partisan politics or the way that, social work and social workers often take for granted that somebody might not be Democrat or somebody might not align. I hear this all the time when I go places, and it's just assumed. And that's to me, that's the smallest part of it. I mean, I know that sucks for people to be left out when things are partisan for the Democrats like that. But I noticed lots of stuff coming up when the election was coming on from Democrats, from the NASW, from Democratic social workers. And I think, first of all, I don't diss anyone for however you placed your vote. I respect you and your experience, and I hope that you came to the best decision, regardless of what you chose, according to what's in your heart, your mind, your intellect, your experience. But what I don't align with and what I can't get with is when we shame other people for certain things that they do, and we try to assume things about them. One thing that I keep seeing being assumed is that if you didn't vote for Kamala Harris, then the only reason you did so was because you're a racist or a misogynist or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And don't don't want to dismiss anything because I'm not saying racism and sexism's not there and it doesn't apply toward Kamala Harris in any way. I'm not saying that. But I also know that there's other reasons why you might not choose to vote for her. And we don't even need to get into those things. But it's a reality that there are other things. And so to just dismiss people in such a way that the only way that you couldn't be on the same page as them is because you're racist or sexist, I'm not feeling it. I'm not vibing with that, basically. And then after the election, I saw a number of things which I thought were extremely divisive. And like I talked about this on a different episode, but it's kind of like, if you build yourself, we'll just talk about individual, if you build yourself as this person of kindness and unity, welcoming and openness, and then whenever you come across somebody that doesn't agree with you, you give them the middle finger and you tell them to get the F out. Well, where are they going to go, if that makes sense? It just doesn't make any sense. It's not social work values. And so I want to play, I'm done here. I'm not going to talk anymore about it. I want to know what your opinions are, but there's a few things I want to share that I've come across. There's 2 videos I'm going to play real quick. One is just from a guy that I saw. I was reflecting on some things. And then the second one is the CEO of the NASW, Anthony Street. And the last thing, I'm just going to read some tweets to you. And then I just want to know what your thoughts are. So we're going to start with this guy. His name is King Randall I. And I had no awareness of this guy before I saw this. So
I made 2 separate videos before the election. One of the videos said I was going to vote for Kamala Harris. The other video said I was going to vote for Donald Trump. And I just wanted to see the mixed reactions from people and how people would react, because I do a lot of work from my hometown, do a lot of work from my community. I work with young boys. And I never said who I was voting for. But I made those 2 videos because I wanted to show people how they are in reality. I made the Donald Trump video and I made the Kamala Harris video. Under the Kamala Harris video, you definitely had some Trump supporters like, well, we understand that you may have a different opinion or whatever, but we still support what you do. Maybe you'll wake up one day, et cetera, et cetera. Things like that. It wasn't nothing vile, wasn't no bad comments or nothing. I made the Donald Trump video. I got people to unfollow me. I got people saying they can't support nothing I do no more. I got folk calling me all types of names, et cetera, et cetera. But what's crazy is all of the Kamala Harris supporters have become what they accuse Trump supporters of being. When you say you support Donald Trump, y'all be ready to kill him. Y'all ready to burn them at the stake. You calling them all types of names. You unfollow them. You don't care what they're doing for their community, nothing. If you support Trump, F you, I hate you so much, et cetera, et cetera. But all the people.
So that got the gist of it. And I just wanted to add something I didn't say before I get to this other video. I looked up the stats, and I can't remember right offhand, but it was like towards 70% of people in the military supported Trump or supported Republicans and voted that way. And so when you're basically telling, and I feel like that video epitomized how social workers are acting, not all social workers, but a lot of social workers are acting and behaving and talking about things right now. And it made me think, so you're saying that 68% of our military should just get the fuck out of the country and leave and piss off? I mean, that's kind of, doesn't really make sense.
The preliminary results are in.
Back to this. As soon as I pull it up, it starts playing, so I got to share it first. So Mr. E Street, he's the CEO of the NASW, and he's not 100% divisive in here, but it's just the angle that he takes about, half the country and stuff that I think is relevant here that is not unifying like he says it is. It's divisive. So let's look at it here.
Well, folks, the preliminary results are in, and former President Trump is projected to be the 47th president of the United States. While this wasn't the outcome many of us hoped for, let's remember that over half the country voted for this result. We as a community, we really have to sit back and reflect on what this means. To me, it means that half of America chose division marked by hate, sexism, and racism over unity, safety, inclusion, and respect for human dignity. In moments like these, it is also important to remember the strength that we hold as a community. Today, the path forward may feel uncertain, and I just wanted you all to know that you are not alone. Let's take time to reflect on where we are and where we want to be. Our history has shown us that advocacy and social justice have always fueled progress, and together, we can continue to uplift one another and fight for the values that we hold dear. As a community, let's also remember that change may come slowly, and sometimes it comes through adversity, but our collective efforts driven by compassion, fairness, and respect will continue to shape a future that honors everyone's rights and dignity. As Dr. Martin Luther King reminded us, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. So today, it's okay to feel a sense of disappointment or even frustration. Your feelings are valid, and this moment is part of a larger journey of progress, struggle, and hope. In times of division, remember, we are stronger when we lean on one another. The work of justice is oftentimes tiring and thankless, but I promise you it's always worth it. Give yourself grace, practice self-care.
And so I felt that while he spread much of a message of unity in some ways towards the end, I felt like, first off, he went about ostracizing what he claimed was half the country and, ascribed racism, and so I can't remember exactly how he said it, sexism and whatnot, to all those people. And I feel like the NASW right now is not the National Association of Social Workers, but it's literally the National Association of Democrat Social Workers. They sell Kamala for t-shirt, Kamala for president, or social workers for Kamala t-shirts. There's no critical discourse. If you were to criticize Kamala Harris, then you would be seen as somebody who's just you want Trump as your next president. And so there's no discourse. There's no way for social workers to hold her accountable. They endorsed her like she was an angel. And it leaves no room for dissent or any kind of, critical discourse. And I think not on that one, but I first saw it on LinkedIn, supposed to be more professional. And some people criticized him on there, and he just responded basically like, I don't represent all social workers. It's just my opinion. And no, you're wrong and I'm right. And I'm like, well, you're the CEO of the NASW. You actually do. You may not literally represent them, but they're going to look to you and they're going to follow your lead. And so by you parroting this divisive stuff and calling it unity, I think it's a huge problem. And I think you can see this. I just want to read these tweets I came across. And I've come across about 100 of these. And it only took me about 2 minutes to search for these ones by typing in social work, Trump, social work, vote. This is what I got. I stand with Kamala Harris says they should lose their licenses for voting Trump alone. Gerald Joseph, MSW, LCSW says, social workers and nurses that voted for Trump are bad people. Social worker for Kamala says, I'm not even sure most voters like eggs. I'm more convinced that they just hate women. Blacks, gays, immigrants, and Jews. But it's easier to say you want cheap eggs. Hi, I'm Dory says, how the fuck can you work in the social work field and vote for Trump? Eddie says, therapists/social workers who voted for Trump are the fucking worst. How can you be in this field with the vulnerable people we work with? Shame on you. Leave the field. Johanna, the empathic social worker, says, if you know a social worker who voted for Trump, shame them until they quit. XXX social work XXX says, social workers who didn't vote for Kamala should have their licenses revoked. And the last one I got here is Victoria says, how can you take the time and spend the money to be a social worker and then vote for someone like Trump? I'll never understand you. You're such a disgrace to the profession. And I can understand why people with certain values or ideas would just not align with Donald Trump and the things that he says. But, just with a quick reflection, I know several people that didn't vote for Harris, and probably, I don't know, nobody's told me exactly what they voted for. But I can assume some of those people probably did vote for Donald Trump. And I think the way that I'm reading these things from social workers and from the NASW CEO, which was not as divisive as these tweets, but all the same, I think, is that while they're saying these other people don't represent social work values, well, they're not proving their point very well, because I feel like they themselves are doing the opposite of epitomizing social work values. I think that we should open up our heart and let each other in and get to know each other better. I feel like I practice that in the way that I do business in every way, shape, and form, or I try to at least. But I'm wondering what you all think about that, because, like I said, you have the veteran background, so surely you know plenty of people that fit into the categories of what these folks are talking about. So what do you all think about that? And how do we, first of all, what do you think about it? But then maybe we could also, you all could transition into what do we do about it? Like, how do we move forward to real unity, social workers?
I just think it's just disgusting altogether, regardless of who you voted for or whose side that you are on. And to be honest with you, I'm kind of so disgusted with the comments. And it's not even disgust because I voted for Trump, because I didn't actually vote at all. I wasn't even able to vote. So I don't know. I just can't. I'm still stuck. I can't believe that people as social workers who are change agents, people that decide that they are going to help improve other people's lives, to be follow our ethical code of conduct and not, like just the, I'm really at a loss for it. I can't believe that you as a social worker and some of them that are licensed clinical social workers will have the audacity to go out there and speak in this kind of way in a public forum so other people can hear you talk down and bad upon people when you're out here to build up and try to help people. So I'm just thrown. I really can't believe those comments will be out there. And it'd be something I would more expect. If that's the case, I would expect it from a bachelor's level first year, still trying to get some of the core Hep C classes and stuff and never have went through the program. Then to know that you've actually went through a bachelor's, a master's degree, a licensing regiment to reach one of the highest levels of licensing that is in our profession, and then to speak in that manner, I don't even have comments for that, to be honest with you. It's pretty sad to hear that's your thought. So God forbid that there's somebody that who truly needs your help that's done something against the law or that has made mistakes in their past, and then they're coming to you at this point to change their lives and turn it around and try to help. And then this the sentiment that you are placing upon people who just decided to vote. Well, then what's the sentiment that you place upon these people that are coming with real challenges and have done real things inside of life that society may look different upon, and we as social workers are supposed to view you in a different light? I know I'm very baffled. I'm not sure what I have to say, but I just can say that just to know that somebody at that highest level that I am trying to achieve would say disgusting things like that on an open forum, regardless of what you think on your own time. And then that's the oppression that you're trying to push upon other people in the society. You might want to go recheck yourself and go look at the code of conduct and the ethical code of, ethical standards that you and me and then all of us as social workers that raised our hand and said that we vow to uphold and stand. Man, I hope they don't, but your license actually might be in jeopardy from the stuff you just said.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Like I was talking about this a little while ago, and the thing that first came to mind was how do you get to that level with that thought process? I mean, honestly, that is an actual question of how do you get to that level when you have that thought process and put it out there like that? Honestly, that's what baffles me. Like, steps as a social worker is meeting people where they're at. It doesn't matter if it's a Trump supporter or Harris supporter or whoever supporter. I mean, well, Alaska, I think there was like almost 12 different presidential spots when I went and voted, and we have ranked choice voting. I'll just say Trump was higher than Harris on my ranked choice. I'm not saying who was first. I'm not saying who was last, but I know who was above who. The catch there is that shouldn't even matter when it comes to it. As a social worker, are you just going to go, well, okay, that's where because you have to look at where a person's at. If you don't understand where they're at, how can you technically even do your job if you can't push your bias out of the way and help that person? Help them actually get better. It's not about politics when you're in that clinical area. It's about what they need. It shouldn't matter about that. And for the military portion of it, yeah, a lot of military person and people do lean Republican, shall I say? Actually, to a point, it actually even goes by the branches. I know a lot of Air Force guys that actually lean a lot Democrat. And it's weird in that way. And as long as people like understand that, it doesn't matter though when it comes to okay, what issue you're going through. That should just be thrown out the window. It's like asking someone, okay, you could take anything and put it into that aspect. I don't want anybody that is gay or is black or like why would you, that's what he's getting to. It's almost a reverse discrimination that he's doing, but he's wanting people to hold the mantle of where he's at. It's disgusting. It truly is. It makes a person like me that's going through the master's course and going to be a social worker not to be a member of the NASW. It pushes people. It'll push people away from it. That's what I see, and that's how I feel about that. But that's me. There's other people that feel different ways. I'm sure there are. Obviously, from the conversation that you just stated.
I think just reflecting on some of the comments I've seen throughout is that there are definitely people that are not lining with that and, that are pushing back. But I think social work is like right now, it's like a monolith of not 100%, but a large portion, like I said, take for granted that there might be some more diversity of the way that folks are looking at things. And we got to do a better job as a whole to make sure that we're inclusive of everybody and that we're taking the time to listen and that we're not, like I said, putting things onto half the population when everybody has their own life and their own experience. And it's our responsibility to be willing to listen to that. And so, I think the NASW should be taking the forefront in that. And I don't see it. I've just seen they're all about, inclusivity and respect in these things, but only if you fit inside the in group, which is quite large.
Okay.
We gotta do better.
Add one thing, because like with the military portion of it, because I was a voting assistance officer. I'll say this, for that, we had to go back to the Hatch Act. So there was no politicalness in the military. You cannot do that. You cannot publicize, I'm wearing this uniform and go, I'm voting for Kamala Harris or Trump. You can't do that in uniform. That is actually against the rules. So from the Hatch Act, even the post office or government agencies are not supposed to do that. So that's part of the Hatch Act. That was back in the 90s that came around. So even when you see it on Facebook or something like that, like the post office backs whoever, like someone can get major trouble for that because of how things are set up. Who posted it, who this, who that. So I think it's just me. I think the NASW, if you're a social work with social work practices and ethics, I think that's something that should be adopted.
If it was adopted, at least it'll protect people from making themselves look as ridiculous as some of these comments that were. And I did see the CEO of his chapter that, he had some kind of weird thing to say. And he tried to bring it back and put the inclusivity, but just to even thought that you will ostracize other people for just having a different opinion or to choose something different, and then for you to label them, which is something in social work we try to prevent doing, is labeling people and stuff as being a racist, which is completely ridiculous to just call any and everybody who made this choice to go that far to be a racist or a sexist or a misogynist. Also, I am super, super duper baffled that they would even allow for those comments to even stay up there, which sometimes not saying something that, how they always say, well, not saying anything is showing that you are implicating yourself with it or you're conforming to what it is. So the fact that you leave those things up lets me know that your chapter doesn't look negatively upon it. So it kind of expresses that these are your views too. And so that's extremely sad to hear and see.
Makes me think of that, that first video of the guy I played where he's talking about, I work with kids in the city, and from all indications of looking at his thing, he's a very popular guy that does a lot of good. I don't think he's a, quote unquote social worker, but I think he's what we would call revolutionary social worker, somebody out there working with kids that's doing things. So according to all the tweets and stuff, so we should dismiss all that good work that man is doing, all the beloved work that he's doing for, the work in the city that a lot of people can't do. No, most people don't have the skills that even that man has to be able to talk about those things, like with working with the kids. And then it makes me think, I thought of you, Mark, when I was, when we're attributing racism to not voting for Harris. Well, I don't know everything that's in your heart, Mark, and I don't know everything in your life experience, but from from my perspective as your professor and seeing your involvement in my classes and the way you talk to other people, and you work side by side with people of color in the student club, and I only heard positive. You won Student Social Worker of the Year. And so are we just dismissing all that and saying, okay, because you voted a way that I don't agree with, I'm going to assume what's in your heart and what's in your mind, and I'm just going to dismiss you and forget. And I'm also going to dismiss all of those other things that I know about you that are quality things. And I think we're making a big mistake as the National Association of Social Workers, and for the social workers that are saying things like that. It's totally antithetical to what social work is and what it should be. And I'm glad that you all both came and we had a little conversation on this, and hopefully, the NASW can open their eyes, and we can't control every individual social worker, right? Nor do we want to, but we want to make sure that the message that we're putting out as the leaders of social work are the ones that demonstrate that our heart's open, not only to the people that agree with us, but to everybody as, this brotherhood, sisterhood, this family of social workers. And that's just the way I feel about it. Well, we got to go. So I got one last question for you, and any last words you want to put in there as well. But Leanna asks, let's put the wrong one in there. Leanna asks a question for both of you. How did military service influence your decision to get into social work? So if you don't mind just talking about that, and any last words you have before we get out of here.
For me, real quick, actually, I don't think that it did have an influence. I won't say that it won't. I've had social workers in my life. Well, I'm sorry, I had people inside of my lives that performed acts that would be similar to social workers, which helped me to be developed in who I am and to get to where I was, and they weren't social workers. While I was in the military, I was a uniform victim advocate. I was a family readiness officer. I was a counselor, not at a social work or a clinical level, but a counselor to many of my Marines. I was also one that went in seat counseling and was looked at to be this crazy jarhead that just want to kill all day, and couldn't really relate to where I was. So my experiences through life had already kind of massaged me into this area and this focus of being a social worker. I just didn't know what that was going to look like then up until this day. But what the military did help to solidify was my understanding of what I particularly felt my calling was, which was to give back and help to veterans specifically. And then that just more broadened up as I became a social worker, and then found that there's many more people I can help outside of just my own inner community. And again, a lot of those reasons why was because of my experiences from seeking mental health assistance and stuff, and then being labeled or looked at from different perspectives because they couldn't relate. And I felt like me as a service member could put back into our service members from a mental health perspective, because I can relate with what you're going through and those things that you're talking about. And then to kind of solidify me going into there more so was on my way out. And many people that were starting to pour into me were actually social workers trying to help me through my transition. So it's like everything, the stars just kept aligning all the way through. The military helped to solidify by my own experiences, and then the people that came into my life at that point in time. And then knowing that that was a gap in an area that needed to be put forth back was what really led me to where it was at. And so that's what the military provided for me. And then going back to what Mark said, and then a little bit of what made it easy for me to go through this path of becoming a social worker was exactly what he said. The military provided me with that stability, financial stability I needed to put forth the time I had to put forth to be able to be as diligent in my studies and research and everything, and then put forth the effort I needed to achieve the goals through my bachelor master's program, and then current license, and then moving to my next license.
Yeah. So military to social work. Hindsight, I was already doing it. It sounds weird to say it that way, especially once I became those higher ranks. It felt like a easy changeover in that sense, because I was already taking care of people in my group. And once I came out to it, went to school and did my first practicum and everything like that, I seen the fast, like, just ability that a social worker can influence on people and everything like that, and see how it can make people's lives better. And it was just like, okay, this totally makes sense to me. I've already, looking back, I've already been doing it. I've already been helping people. It's just an individual level, in my platoon level, in my company level, then the community. Like G was saying, like you you get in those community groups, even in the military, and it grows you. So it gives you that experience even before you get into social work, and then you can look back on it. Hey, we did these kind of things, and it adds to your experience. You might not even know what the heck it's called back then, you know, but then you're finding out it's like, oh, I used to do that. Oh, that's this kind of setup. This is that. I've even looked into that and it was like, wow, I was using CBT for a long time with people. I've been using certain therapies for a long time with people, and it just came natural. So it's like, oh, that seems like, and I think social workers that come out of the military should look at that, look at their career, and go, what was I actually using when I was doing these counselings, when I was with these people? They're going to be able to marry it up with a therapy or something that they're like, I was doing this already, and then they can it could just bring even more forward and help more people. That's how, that was my outlook coming into social work.
Right on. We appreciate you. We appreciate your service in the military. We appreciate you as social workers, and I appreciate you taking the time. Almost 2 hours for this podcast, went a little bit overtime. I appreciate you for the relationships you've had with me, for the students you were in my classes. And I'm sorry for, well, I shouldn't say I'm sorry, but, it's too bad that some of the social workers are talking about things the way that they are. But I just want to say much respect to you both for taking the time out of your day. Much respect to everybody that had questions in the chat. Thanks, Carla. Thanks, Anna. Thanks, Liana.
Yeah.
I wanted to say I was gonna say the same. I just want. Hey, it's nice to see you again, Mark. It's been a while, but hey, brother. Hey, again, congratulations. I'm proud to hear some of the accomplishment that you are making. Hey, keep striving forward. I know you're gonna get to that end goal. You're gonna graduate, man. So just keep focused and everything. Christian, I want to say thank you also for bringing me here. Thank you for keeping in contact, and again, loaning me your wife for a little bit, for an hour every week. You know what I'm saying, so I can achieve my goal. Is very, very much appreciated. And of course, I'm not a sex offender, so I'm just joking about loaning. So don't take it the wrong way. But it is for everybody else out there. And then everybody else that did join, appreciate your time as well. Thank you for the questions, and thank you for just hearing what we have to say.
I need transcripts of those meetings, G.
Yeah, same thing here. I just kind of like pretty much ditto G. So like, thank you for everything. Thank you for the thanks, and we're looking forward to the next LCSW. So we're good there, right? And maybe I can get some little pointers afterwards, you know, and maybe I might even have to see how you finagle Ace into, you know, giving a little help to me with his wife, you know, too, getting that little in there, you know, so help me out getting those licenses too.
But Mark, yeah, just if if you need that, just reach out to me and we'll make it happen.
Thank you.
Hey, Mark, G, thanks. Have a good day,
Have
and
a good one.
we'll be
Stay
in
blessed.
touch. Peace.
Aloha.
Peace.